Good afternoon, everyone. Bonjour à tout le monde, and welcome to the Swimming Canada Facility series number 4 as part of our webinar series with Myrtha Pools. Today's topic is swim schools and swim clubs. I am Ahmed El-Awadi, and I'm the CEO of Swimming Canada. It's my pleasure to have you all here today, and thank you for joining. We have a tremendous panel with us today, as well as some great content. Our objectives for today, we'll run through the introductions, do some background, talk about some key research, take a look at some global overviews, and then go into the roundtable and question and answer discussions. La conversation aujourd'hui sera en anglais, mais on va avoir un lien pour une version en français en quelques jours. Je vous remercie d'être ici aujourd'hui, and I will go ahead and continue. Next slide. So myself is Ahmed El-Awadi. I'm the CEO of Swimming Canada. We have with us today Dan Thompson, CEO and President of Myrtha Pools, Trevor Tiffany, the Chairman of the Board of Myrtha Pools USA and Canada, and finally Stu Isaac, Aquatic Facility Program Management Consultant for the Isaac Sports Group. So with that, oh, sorry, I thought I was turning that over to you, Dan, but it's a bit soon. So just a little background, Swimming Canada is the governing body for competitive swimming in Canada. We work very closely with our partners at the Red Cross, Life Saving Society, YMCA, and others swimming or organizations, swimming lessons groups, or other swimming-based sports as well. Our membership is roughly, give or take, around 50,000 competitive members. There are over 2 million participants swimming lessons a year. We have 100,000 officials, 4,000 coaches, 20,000 masters. And in terms of our infrastructure, we align through our provincial sections across the country to deliver programming at various levels and work with clubs all the way through, as well as working with the various governments. We do work with the Life Saving Society as well, and coordinate efforts there as needed, and as well with the Red Cross in terms of that area of expertise as well. So the Swimming Canada strategic plan is broken into 4 pillars: world-leading performance, athlete development, organizational excellence, and financial capacity. Those are the main pillars, and our new strategic plan will speak to that as well moving forward, which we'll be launching at the end of this month. And we'll have the same 4 pillars. Athlete development is moving into sport development. And so as part of our sport development program, our facilities and everything that goes around facilities, swim clubs, learn to swim, integration, best practices of facilities, facility construction, different things like that, which Myrtha has been our partner for an extremely long time, a dedicated partner and provider, has worked closely with us on this facility webinar series to bring that value-added content to our community and education that we sometimes so desperately need in order to stay current with what's out there, what the rest of the world is doing, and where we should be going as well as a country. And we focus on specific topics like we're doing today, which is swim schools and swim clubs and working together. So we use various companies to do market research, and one of the ones that we wanted to pull out is a study that was done to parents. And number 2 on the list was learn how to swim behind learn how to read as an essential life skill. And Canada is a land of lakes. Of course, we are frozen for a good part of the year, but the other part of the year, our families and our children and our communities tend to vacation and spend recreation time around water. Not necessarily always pools, but it could be lakes, it could be beaches, it could be flying down for spring break, somewhere warm. So the focus of learning how to swim is something that's critical and key. And we have a tremendous amount of water access here in Canada, both in the summer and the winter. And so while it may surprise some people, learning how to swim is a key essential item for children. We understand that this was going to rank very high amongst priorities, and as access grows to more and more learn to swim and facilities across the country, we will see a significant improvement in these numbers moving forward. Next slide. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Dan Thompson, and thank you for tuning in today. Merci à tout le monde d'être ici. So over to you, Dan.
Okay, thanks very much, Ahmed. So I'm going to do a bit of a moderator setup right now. So I'd like to thank you for joining us. We have a mix of swim schools. Now, yesterday there were about 40 signed up. By this morning there were about 50. So roughly we've got about 18 swim schools, about 10 swim clubs, and 6 municipal partners and NSOs and MSOs. We also have a gentleman, I hope he's on, from Alvaro from Peru who registered. So thank you for joining us. Realistically, we're aiming for about a 1 hour and 15 minutes, and then we will take questions. Remember, this talk is being recorded, and it will be available for viewing later. So there are 2 main segments of the conversation. First, we're going to have Trevor Tiffany, who's going to give us an overview of how swim clubs and swim schools have worked together globally. And I will introduce Trevor just in a minute. Then we're going to have a panel discussion or roundtable where I will pose 5 questions. We will ask each of the panelists to give a brief response to each question, approximately 2 minutes in duration. It's always hard, but try and keep it to 2 minutes if you can. We'll also have Stu Isaac, president of the Isaac Sports Group, and Stu is an aquatic consultant with deep experience in building and operating facilities. He's a former swimmer, coach, and marketing executive for Speedo International before starting ISG. And today he will help me monitor the chat line and chime in to ask supplemental questions where relevant. So remember, we've got a chat line, and please, if you've got questions, pose them there. And if we can't get to them in the time, we'll answer them later. Okay. And it's really important to know kind of who you are and where you're from. We had a challenge with that a while back. So I will introduce the panelists later. But first, it's my great pleasure to introduce Trevor Tiffany. So Trevor is the chairman of Myrtha Pools Canada and US and serves on the Myrtha board of directors. He is a past breaststroke champion for England and who later got into coaching, becoming Canada's national coach for 3 consecutive Olympic Games. He's had a 27-year association with Myrtha Pools, and today spearheads special events dealing with all things FINA. This includes all the World Championships and numerous Olympic Games and other continental games. He's also has a special interest in Learn to Swim, having consulted to FINA on many occasions. I can think of no one better to talk to us today about Learn to Swim than Trevor. So Trevor, over to you.
Thanks, Dan. So next slide. Well, a little bit about Myrtha. I mean, this session is on partnerships. And for those of you that don't know much about Myrtha, we have partnerships with many federations around the world, but we also partner with many associations, such as the International Swim School Association, the Australian Swim School Association, Water Babies, and so on. So we find partnerships a very important part of our makeup, because obviously we want to help them build pools, but more importantly for our association or our company, I want the employees of the company to know as much as they can about swimming, and then we'll do a better job servicing the swimming community. So let's start with where it all started, and that is in the UK with Swim England. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, the ASA was the swimming association in the UK, later or recently taken as Swim England, founded in 1869. So quite a reasonable history in terms of swimming. But what we know about the ASA now is they basically run swimming in the UK. So they've associated with people like water babies, and they also lobby with the government. So there's been a very strong lobby to make sure that in the schools in the UK, which is really the form of swimming teaching, or the original form of swimming teaching in the UK, was in the school system. So they've had very strong swimming for many, many years because they've got good swimming teachers within the school system. And they've lobbied the government, so they still have a law in place that by age 11, all pupils should have learned to swim. So all schools have to have swimming as part of their school curriculum. In the old days, all the schools had a pool, but just like in Canada, pools are closing all over the place, so the schools were the first ones to lose their pools because of costs and so on. The ASA have done a great job of developing their own badge award scheme, and if you don't know much about that, you should check the ASA out, but really they have badges for everything. I think we've got a slide of their regular badge scheme. So, you know, you've probably got them in the swim schools, those of you who run swim schools, but the ASA have badges for everything. And we had a very interesting webinar with them a week or two ago, where they were saying they've lost £350,000 a week from their badge award scheme. £350,000 a week was the income they were receiving from their badge award scheme. And we think about all the problems with pools closing, but their association, of course, all their funding's gone out the window because of this. They're obviously looking for government help and so on. They have a club award scheme, which they run. They also are the authority for measuring pools to say that they meet certification standards. So they actually do the survey for pools. So they know when a new pool is being built, they can influence the type of pool that's built, they can make sure it has all the facilities that it needs, and so on. They're a very powerful swim association, and we are recommending to many of the other associations, they should be involved, especially in the design and surveying of new pools. What is our next slide? So that's the club award scheme I was mentioning. And of course, we have to remember that these associations and these federations have to normally look after open water, synchronized swimming, water polo, just anything that's in the aquatic community. So they have a big job, big staffs, and the ASA currently have a staff of over 200 people and laid 74 more off during the COVID crisis. So the COVID has really affected federations as it has the swimming community. Oh, I put this slide in because this is Captain Webb swimming the English Channel. And he really was one of the forerunners of the popularity of swimming in the UK and then subsequently around the world. And he swam the English Channel in, I don't know, it was around the same period as the Swimming Association formed around 1870. And unfortunately, he actually lost his life in Niagara Falls, swimming exhibitions and trying to swim through the rapids and whirlpools in Niagara Falls and didn't make it. But at that time, he was very famous and toured the world doing swimming exhibitions all over the place. Let's have a look at Australia. You people who run swim schools will know very well that in terms of swim schools, Australia have been the leaders in the world. And this is really from a guy called Ross Gage, who was the person who first started to run the Swim Australia program. And they have a tremendous number of swimming schools and have linked very strongly, for a good part of them, with the Australian Swimming Association. So you've got Swim Australia, the Australian Swimming Coaches and Teachers Association. And these associations were founded by some of the old greats of Australian swimming, people like Don Talbot, Gary Gathercole, the Australian 100-meter swimmer. Come on, Trevor, you can remember his name. John Devitt, and so on. These guys who were formerly great stars in coaching and swimming really organized the swimming teaching side of the Australian swim program. And then, of course, it evaporated, or not evaporated, it grew into many, many swim schools run on a private basis. And so there is really some of the great examples of how to run a swimming school organization and make money, which private people do. And in the beginning in Australia, as you probably well know, it all started in these pools that were built on the beaches, right? So Australia is predominantly a coastal country, and all the main beaches around Australia have pools like this. This is the Iceberg Club in Sydney, which really swim in ocean water. But this is where all the swimming teaching and the swimming training started. Nowadays, if we go and look at the pool that they've just recently finished, this one is the centre that was built for the Commonwealth Games on the Gold Coast, Queensland. And we see that, their tradition of competitive swimming continues, right? Not a curve in sight. Two beautiful 50-meter pools, a 25-meter training pool, and a diving centre. So Queensland is a great example, and Australia is a great example of 50-meter pools. It seems that every community around has a 50-meter pool, and so traditionally what was happening, they're building them like this, competitive pools. So to have swimming teaching around, it was the swim coach who started his own swimming teaching program in these pools. And it was those coaches that got together and developed these programs, who was doing best practices in terms of teaching, and developed Swim Australia and the Swim Schools Associations. That's Australia. In Europe, it's a different model altogether. So in Europe, and I've included 2 or 3 countries here, but the model is really developed from companies or other clubs. So can we go on to the next slide? So this is Spain. So this is the beach in Barcelona, and the club on the right is Club Natation de Barcelona. And if you can see the full screen, you'll see these buildings here. They operate them all. They've got an indoor, outdoor 50-meter. No, back slide, please. This pool on the right's got outdoor, indoor 50-meter. And this is the club next door on the left. This is Club Atlético Barceloneta, and they're the #1 water polo team in Spain. And the other club is closing in on the #1 swimming team in Spain. But the Club Natation de Barcelona has 10,000 members. 10,000 members. And that's because in Europe, many of the clubs originated as social clubs. So if you wanted to learn how to swim, you went to the swimming club, right? And you stayed and you joined the swimming club, and the parents joined the swimming club. So once a week, they would have family night, and all the family would come and socialize, and that's why they're beautiful clubs and got social areas. And 2 or 3 nights a week, you'd go for the first session in learn to swim and so on, and gradually developed into competitive clubs as well. And so it's these sort of numbers, the 10,000 is unusual, but it's usual for a club in Europe to have 2,500, 3,500 members, as it is in some other places. Thanks. The next slide. This is one of the top clubs in Germany, the Canoe Club, And, oh, sorry, we're still in Spain. Yeah, this is a club in Madrid, Spain. 7 pools, right? Again, indoor, outdoor, 50 meters, and several other pools, another 5 pools for teaching swimming, for family swimming, and so on. So this is the tradition in Europe that you fill the whole spectrum, because there are very few swim schools in these particular areas. They're catered for by the swim club. Sorry, thanks. Next one. Oh, this is Italy. Italy, again, has the full range, and their teaching of swimming has normally originated from a swimming club that's normally originated from another sports club. So this is the Aquen facility, which has, you can't quite see, oh, your teaching pools at the far end, and I've put a shot in. But this was built specially for the World Championships in Rome, although the club already had a pool. It's got an outdoor 50-meter pool, it's got an indoor 25, plus a teaching pool. And this club grew from the local rowing club. And the local rowing president became, for some reason, the president of the Olympic Association, president of the World Swimming Championships, and he decided they should have a club out of the event and build this beautiful center in Rome. Next one. Germany. Germany has a tremendous history in terms of swimming. If we forget the results from East Germany, West Germany also have always had good swimmers, and they're very similar to the rest of Europe, but their programs partly originated from companies. So the other unusual part of swimming in Europe is that a company had a social aspect to the company, and that would often involve a swimming club, or more likely a water polo club. Water polo is incredibly important in Europe, and most of the good swimming clubs have grown out of a water polo history. And I used to play water polo over in Europe, and my club, our headquarters were the local pub. And in fact, the club got so strong that we bought the local pub. Spending so much money there, that became ours, and it's a true story. In Germany, Essen is probably one of the most well-known clubs, winning many of the national championships, but also they do teach swimming within their program. Next one, please. Because of the European influence, we find that in South America, you have a very similar setup. The clubs are based around other teams, other clubs, and this one is probably one of the most famous ones in Rio, which is the Flamengo Club, and they're prominent in soccer in Rio de Janeiro and, sorry, in Brazil. But they also have a very strong swimming tradition, as you can see. And again, this is a club with 6,000 members who are part of a very elaborate sports setup. You can do any sport by joining the Flamengo Club. And sport in the past has been soccer, but also they're very strong in swimming, have a couple of world record holders on their books. But same thing again, do everything. Teaching right from the beginning, teaching classes right through to the international program. Next slide. And here's one of the former really famous Brazilian swimmers, Gustavo Borges. And Gustavo has, I can't even see the slide at the bottom myself, but he has over 200 swim schools of his own and 3 swim academies where he's built the building and everything to do with it. So he's become very successful because he copied this model from the Australian model. So he decided he was going to be a businessman and make some money for himself, and he's done very, very well indeed. So I slipped that one in. So now we come to North America, where our tradition in swimming is competitive swimming. And we haven't traditionally taught swimming in the swim clubs. The swim clubs originated as a competitive swimming fraternity. And so learn to swim has been a constant problem for swim clubs in Canada and the USA of where did the swimmers come from? Traditionally, they've come across from the Red Cross, Royal Life, or the local Ys, and probably some others that I haven't mentioned, but that's really where the swim clubs have got their membership from. And so they go and there is quite a bit of swimming in the schools, but that's a bit later. Where did they learn to swim? So in North America, there's an enormous gap in terms of where people went when they wanted to swim before the local authorities started to provide a swim school service. So to fill that gap, of course, swim schools started. And there are several franchise type swim schools, which some of you may own yourself. And so what we're talking about today is setting up a link with some of these swim schools. Can we have a look at the next? Streamline Brands is one of the groups who have several brands within their setup. There are a few of these type of people. Safe Splash, Swimtastic, Swim Labs, all part of it. Swim Labs is an unusual one that we talk about, which is very different from the standard one. And I think we cover that a little bit later, but really Streamline Brands are filling the gap, and it's a business enterprise. Next. Oh, here it is, Swim Labs. So Swim Labs swim in these endless pools, and they run their lessons. They run triathlete lessons and so on. They have a very elaborate camera and so on system. So I find this pretty unusual within the community, but very interesting. Very simple to build your own pool and start operating a business in a small space very quickly. But their volume of clients obviously is not the same as a regular swim school. Next. Goldfish Swim School was one you'll know about as well. They advertise themselves as a higher level swim pool, building their own facilities and incorporating some decent features within their facilities that they build. So that's one that would be a good association to have. And last but not least would be the British Swim School, which started long ago with in the UK with Rita Goldberg. And, Rita Goldberg, and has drifted into Canada and the USA as well. So that's my little contribution of some background as to why we're in the position that we are, and we need to work together to provide the best opportunities for the swimmers and for the swim schools and the swimming associations to start working together. Is that it, Dan?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks very much, Trevor, for your time today on this. And in the chat room, if you've got questions for Trevor, pose them and we'll get back to you. So we really appreciate that. So swim schools and swim clubs working together for mutual benefit. So why is this topic so important? For one, and as the S&C research points out, learning to swim is a critical life skill that ideally needs to be a coordinated effort by all aquatic stakeholders. So the more efficiently all aquatic partners work together can help save lives, allow more children to experience, the joy of water, which we all love. So today is very much about understanding perspectives, breaking down barriers, and learning how we might work together. And given COVID, I think it's critical conversation to have. So I'd like to just quickly introduce our panelists, and then we'll get right into the questions. So the first panelist we have is Sharon Crowley, who's the CEO, Chief Experience Officer for Aquaventure Swim Centers. They're located in Vancouver, BC, and have been since 1984. They currently have the only purposely built warm water learn to swim facility in Vancouver. And we're very proud. They're in the process of building a new facility that has 2 Myrtha Pools in it. So pre-COVID, they were teaching 2,000 students per week, and they've shifted their business model, and they're now teaching 800 per week. They specialize in teaching children ages 6 months to 10 years with a strong focus on parent, child, and preschool lessons. So thank you for your participation today, Sharon. Karim Zayed is the Business Development Director of KK Swim, and he was a former swimmer, swam for Point Claire for 15 years, was coached by Ryan Mallette, and a member of the national Egyptian swim team. He is a good swimmer. He was a 151 long course 200 freestyler and a 359 400 freestyler. So he's certainly a good high performance athlete, or was. He's the co-owner of KK Swim School in Calgary, Edmonton, Saskatoon, and Regina, where they've taught over 350,000 learn to swim lessons over a span of 5 years for both children and adults. And he's very focused on developing relationships, solving problems, and contributing to the overall growth of his organization. So thank you, Karim. Kim Inglis-Clarke is the operations manager for the Cobra Swim Club in Brampton. So Kim has been in aquatics for her entire life. Her extensive knowledge and experience come from many years as an athlete, coach, mentor, and managing the club. And Kim has coached athletes who have gone in to break national and provincial records. She is the lead and creator of the Cobra Junior Swim Club, an introductory program for sport of competitive swimming and pool operators, and as well managing the McMurtry Pool location, which is one where the Cobra Swim Club has a long-term lease arrangement with the municipality. So actually renting this facility off the municipality. So thank you, Kim. Our final panelist is George Hindiger. He's the owner, coach, entrepreneur with his wife, Anna, of Pikes Peak Athletics in Colorado Springs, where they custom built and operate their own facility, which includes a Myrtha tank. And they run both a swim school and a swim club. They have one division that's sort of water babies to base camp, which is pre-competitive, and another group that's sort of really the swim team, which is age group to masters. So George is a longtime coach with a reputation as a builder of clubs. He's passionate about long-term athlete development, and he's the former USA Swimming National Junior Coach Manager. So thank you, George, for joining us. So let's get right into the questions. Again, chat line's open, so if you want to pose questions, you can. The first one is more from a business perspective. So I want you to tell us a little bit about your business and how you have attempted to work with swim schools or vice versa, swim clubs or swim schools in the past, and any lessons learned you might bring to it. So Sharon, can we start with you?
Sure, Dan, that'd be great. Thank you. First of all, my background was I worked in municipal recreation as an instructor and supervisor at a very large facility here in BC. And we had the typical 78-degree pool that was cold and large classes. And then I went on to work for the Canadian Red Cross Water Safety Service, traveled all over the province, seeing all kinds of programs, and noticed that we really had our pools designed not for learn to swim. The water wasn't warm, classes were large, pools were deep, we didn't have great equipment, whatever. And so I began my own swim school, Aquaventures, in 1984. Was able to lease a small pool, got warm water, started developing specialized teaching equipment, had smaller classes, learned from folks around the world, specializing in baby and parent-taught classes and preschool, because that was a big hole in the market in Vancouver in those days. A lot of kids didn't start swimming till age 6, so there was a real need for preschool and parent-child swimming. So that's how we started, we teach all ages. As Dan said, previous to COVID, we were at 2,000 kids a week. We've been maxed out for years. We are lower capacity now because of COVID. However, we're looking forward to our new facility where we'll be able to expand once again. Basically, our relationship with swim clubs is that we're a feeder group to them. They love to get our graduates because they're great swimmers. And we also recruit instructors and staff from swim clubs. So basically, that's been our relationship in the past here in Vancouver. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sharon. Kiram, over to you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Dan. First, I'd like to start off by thanking Myrtha Pools and Swimming Canada for organizing the webinar. I believe this topic is going to be of great value in the near future. So I'm co-owner of K&K Swim School. We operate in Regina, Saskatoon, Calgary, and Edmonton. And we mainly do private and semi-private learn to swim lessons out of about 45 third-party venue locations. And we also started teaching online introduction to bathtub lessons for infants over COVID across the world. So that's been quite an interesting process. In regards to partnerships with clubs, we've had informal relationships with some clubs in the 5 years that we've been operating. So I would say a lesson to be learned along the way in regards to partnership is that there needs to be a clear understanding of how each entity is structured and what their purpose is. In some of our cities we've operated, I've even coached in, there has always been a misconception of competition leads from both parties. This is a misconception because of the lack of communication and education from both schools and clubs. So whether your club is city-backed, community-structured, incorporated, or a non-for-profit, if a relationship is to be formed, I would say that both parties need to sit down and understand what their purpose and foundation is and how they can benefit from one another, because it's very possible based on the numerous examples from around the world.
Great.
That's it.
Thanks, Kiram. Thank you. Kim, over to you. Maybe Kim's on mute. You there, Kim?
Unmute. Oh my, thank you, Dan. Hi, everyone. Sorry, I didn't unmute myself.
No worries.
Let me tell you a bit about Cobra Swim Club. We are Brampton, Ontario's community swim team, established 1969. We're not for profit. We are governed by a board of directors who all bring their own spice to the table. We love to swim fast, and we love to represent our city on all levels of performance, regional through to international. Like many swim clubs, our program structure is shaped like a pyramid. As Dan was mentioning, our junior swim club is our foundation, which is an introduction to competitive swimming. And the reason we developed this program was to bridge that gap from learn to swim into our sport. In a normal year, we typically have 300 kids, September to mid-September to early June. We then run a summer club as well with 250. It's one time a week. It's minimal commitment, experience, and it's trying to hook those families and swimmers into the sport. From there, we have our novice program where, we're now training 3 times a week. There's 1 or 2 competitions and there's more commitment and more training time. So we'll go for 5 times a week, 7 times a week, and then our senior group is, they're swimming 9 times a week, anywhere from 90 minutes to 2-hour workouts. And those performance groups, they tend to start sort of mid September, and they can go through into early August. And in that part of our structure of our club, we typically have about 220 swimmers. We have found that with COVID, our novice to performance level, we had an 80% return, which we are absolutely thrilled about. When we're talking about our junior club, that's less commitment. They haven't been part of our membership for too long. We're actually just starting it on Saturday, but we're looking at about a 33% return. But we have modified that, so we're hoping to build confidence and structure to be able to build on that through as we navigate through this time. Any lessons learned? Absolutely. I have found through my time here working at Cobra that all the effort and energy working on developing meaningful relationships with our city partners as well as our swim school is priceless. It is absolutely a necessity. We have benefited from it, and we also hope and believe that our partners and swim school aquatic leaders have benefit from working with us as well.
Just a quick follow-up, Kim. Have you worked with any swim schools?
Yes, we have. There's several swim schools in Brampton, and we have worked with them mostly in that recruiting kind of endorsement situation. Our club, we do not dabble in any kind of learn to swim, so we get a lot of families inquiring about joining the club, and they're just not at the experience level or the strength level that they need to be to try out for the club. So we, in turn, direct them to our swim schools, as well as the swim schools. You know, we make really great relationships with them in hopes that they endorse us, and they have those conversations with families for next steps, and perhaps, hey, you're a good, strong swimmer. Why don't take a look at your local swim club and check that out. And
Kim, this is Stu Isaac.
Hi.
Your comments you just made really address a question that has come up from the group.
Okay.
The question was asked, actually more addressed to Sharon initially, that they do not, Sharon, you responded, we do not recommend a specific club. The question was, do you recommend which clubs your graduate should go to? And I think, Dan, you had actually were going toward that in the future, yeah. But just wanted to tee that up, that this is a question that was addressed to Sharon, but it's something that you all could mention and address. Thank you.
Okay. George, over to you. And you're unique because you actually run a swim club and a swim school. So talk to us a little about your business.
Yes, first, thanks for having me. I think it's a great idea by Swimming Canada and Myrtha to have a platform to discuss combining or integrating swim teams and swim lessons. Pikes Peak Athletics is, we're swimming people, competitive swimming people here. We recognized a void, just like Sharon Crowley, in our market where there wasn't accessible water for competitive swimming. And the swim lesson market was pretty sparse. So our main influences in our business model were Chris Davis at Swim Atlanta and Mike Holober and Nitro down in Austin, Texas. We studied closely what they did, and Stu Isaac helped us a lot with our model as well. Thanks, Stu. Good to see you. They all said that if we had swim lessons, we still have 5 different sites in country clubs and private pools, summer pools. And they all said that if we build our own pool, then our swim team would grow. And that's definitely the case. We've grown a ton. Now the swimmers learn to swim in our facility. They see the older kids swimming. The parents understand what to do and where their kid's going to end up. And it's a lot more streamlined, and there's a logical next step for each level. So thanks for having us, and I look forward to participating today.
Can I ask one follow-up, George? So in terms of when you were doing that business model to go to the bank and borrow the money, how important was the swim school piece of the puzzle? I know you wanted to run a swim club, but was it really critical that you had both pieces of that puzzle to be legitimate?
Sure. Yes, it's absolutely critical. We all know that swim teams really can only generate revenue through volunteerism, gifts, and dues. And that's not enough to have the resources to, pay really good staff and have a really good venue to train and do all the things that you want to do with equipment and travel and things like that. So we were looking at ways to increase our revenue and also, increase our client base. So swim lessons were absolutely critical. They're more than 2/3 of our revenue, and they obviously prevent drowning and provide a service to the community and a feeder as well.
Great. Thanks very much. Okay, let's go on to our second question. It's taking a little longer than I thought, but it's all good. So this is more in the startup go forward strategy. So given this unprecedented time we are in, now dealing with COVID-19, what do you think the future will bring? Does COVID create any opportunities for public and private facility owners to work with swim schools or vice versa? Could COVID fast forward the outsourcing of swimming lessons at the municipal level? It's a bit of a question. Actually, it's good that we have Sharon to start because we had a good conversation about this one day. So Sharon, what do you think?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting time. In Vancouver, our public pools are still not open. We're one of the only businesses, organizations, facilities teaching lessons in the city at this time. No one knows how these pools are going to reopen. And I think from a budgetary standpoint and what I'm hearing about municipalities being broke, literally, that they will look to partner, lease out, go into contracts to run these expensive facilities, and perhaps all kinds of new opportunities will present themselves. Certainly, swimming pools are one of the most expensive things to run in terms of what cities are doing, and I think there's going to be any number of opportunities coming up. So exciting times.
Great, good. Karim, how about you?
Sharon, I completely agree with everything you just said there. So before I answer this question, I'd just like to talk a little bit about the current market forecast for the swim school industry. So the swim school market in North America is very large, and it's only in its infancy in Canada right now. The market is estimated at over $20 billion. However, significantly less than $1 billion of the market is currently served at the moment. That's a large opportunity for significant growth, and we're beginning to see that with many independent swim schools and franchises penetrating the market. So going into the next point is most municipality pools in Canada, they run on a deficit. Many of them make little to no profit and run on losses year to year. There are many factors to this loss, and I won't get into them now. But what I can say is that the economic engine, as I like to call it, of the majority of public recreational facilities is learn to swim lessons. Municipal pools would not be able to operate without them. And so this all comes down to swim schools being a commercial entity. Swim schools are an incentive by service provider. Many competitive swim clubs are an incentive by performance provider. So swim clubs need many leads, making the ranks up their different groups to scout talent, essentially. So if a swim school and a swim club could both operate out of the same venue, I believe a very secure and profitable and high-level relationship can be formed. It's already begun in many countries around the world, with municipalities letting third parties contract out swimming lessons, or sometimes all services altogether, allowing the swim school and club to have a blended program that lowers the retention rate of swimmers and allows more talent to funnel through. So that's what I got to say about that.
Okay, great. Hey, I'm going to ask one follow-up question because I'm curious. So when you look at, you're a competitive swimmer, when you look at the typical municipal environment, what do you think is missing? Is the warm water piece missing?
I would definitely say that's one of the contributing factors. I like to go back to what Kim said before about bridging the gap. I think there's a large transition from a learn to swim environment to a competitive environment. And I think you see a big increase in retention when they go to the competitive environment, because it's such a change. Essentially, you're going from warm pools to cold pools to a less structured environment. You're going from a 3-to-1 to possibly 6-to-1 ratio to a 20-to-1 ratio where there's not as much individualized attention. So that's one of the contributing factors, and then there's many other.
Okay. Kim, how about you? What do you think?
Well, I like how Karim thinks, that's for sure. I would love that kind of blended situation where swim schools and swim teams, are working more in unison. But I would echo the other panelists. Like these are tough times, and the fact is we're all in the same boat, modifying programs and struggling and navigating through these challenging times. And I would just hope that it brings more openness and willingness to work together and share success and failures, so we can all move towards bettering everybody.
Okay. And George, what's your perspective? I mean, you've gone and done it. You've built a purposeful facility with both a swim school and a swim club. And what do you think these times are going to bring to us in this sector?
I think we all wish that we knew what we would hold, but from my perspective, I think that's why we built a pool, so that we could control our own destiny within the letter of the law for our, what the state of Colorado and is setting forth in our county. So we just, we look at the law when it comes out, and our county has variances, and we study those variances very closely, and we look at what we're able to do, and then we adjust our program accordingly. So we're going to continue to do that. It's gotten more and more open as we've progressed through COVID, and I do anticipate it continuing to get more open. We're optimists here as well. So hopefully we'll go back to normal, as close to normal as we can. So as far as adjustments made, smaller ratios, what Kim was saying, what Karim was saying, I totally agree with too. Warm water, warm air is absolutely critical for swim lessons, and we have a separate teaching pool to do that. I think this idea of partnering swim clubs and swim lessons in the United States, at least, is a really important thought that swim clubs should consider. That way they're not beholden to school districts or government facilities, so that they can, they can control their own destiny a little bit more.
Yeah. And I got one follow-up question. So in Canada, basically the municipal pools, Kim's pool probably closed for March 14th and probably open maybe this week if we're lucky. So they were closed for 6 months basically, and some of them drained. Like, how long were you out?
I'd have to go back and look for sure, but it was probably 6 weeks that we couldn't operate. And then the letter of the law here said that you could do personal training. So we followed what that meant, and we got swimmers in the water in that ratio that was outlined by the variance in our county. So we slowly trickled in and slowly built up, and we're trying to meet the threshold. While staying safe.
And can I ask, sorry, I shouldn't do this, but a follow-up for Sharon or Karim. How long were you guys closed in the swim school business with your dedicated, well, Sharon maybe be better because you have a dedicated site.
Yeah, we were down from March 15th, and we started back up June the 8th.
Okay, so not bad.
Dan, I have a follow-up for George. Because George is kind of unusual here in that he's built his own facility, and probably he didn't mention that he's got a 25-meter by 25-yard pool, plus a small teaching pool. My question to George is, if he was to do it again now, would he change that? Would he change the size of his teaching pool? Would he do anything different, build another pool? What would he do?
You always want more water, right? So we would probably make the teaching pool bigger. We were really limited by the footprint of land that we had, and the bigger we made the facility, the smaller the parking lot was, and we knew we needed X number of parking spots. So, Trevor, our next goal is an outdoor 50-meter pool, and that park in that patch right next to us. So you'll be hearing from us soon.
All right. To help you with that, George.
Great. Okay, let's go on to the third question, which is developing promotions and awareness. So talk to us a little bit about how you are currently promoting your programs and partner relationships. How do you, or in conjunction with program partners, facilitate progression from swim lessons to stroke instruction to preteen to swim team? Is it informal, or are you extending program options? I think we've answered this to a degree, but I'd like to get your perspective. So Sharon, over to you.
Right now, there's more demand than supply by far. So we are not doing any kind of marketing other than internally and serving who we can serve right now. The model has shifted from group to much more private, semi-private, and what we call a 3-pod class. So we're just dealing with who we can accommodate at this time, and no, we're not extending any program options.
Okay. Karim?
Same thing. Exactly what Sharon said. I mean, at the moment, our school has an informal relationship with a couple of clubs, and we're doing like a leads for instructor partnership. I would like to make it official and make it, more what's the word I'm looking for?
Formalized?
Yeah. But I'd like to make an official partnership with the clubs operating out of the cities we work in, so both parties can take advantage of the benefits. There are many benefits at the table. Some of them off the top of my head could be merchandise discounts, professional development opportunities, possible mergers, which I've seen, marketing opportunities, tons of those, and the list goes on. That's
okay. Kim, how about yourself?
Yeah, very similarly. But I guess as a swim club, we're a little bit more fortunate where we have a membership that we have been working with for a number of years. So we've done very minimal marketing. We're just focusing on our membership, trying to get everyone back and confident and comfortable with our Return to Swim framework. We have modified and adapted our junior club program just for flexibility and room to build. We typically run like a 32-week program where it's a membership from September all the way to June. But now, instead of 32 weeks, we've pitched a 4 times 8-week program. So people have a little bit more flexibility, and as we navigate through this and build confidence, we're hoping to build our junior club back up again to where it was.
Okay. George, any thoughts?
Yeah, I would echo what Sharon said as well. It's really tough to get people in the door and build out to capacity right now with the restrictions. So our marketing budgets is not what it normally is. I would focus on the middle part of this question though, because I think it's important. It's something that we learned. Our swim lesson program has a pretty strict regimen, as we all do, and you can't graduate until you do the certain skills. And then from there, the kids still aren't quite ready for swim team because they don't have the endurance. So we have what's pretty common, a pre-competitive swim team. And that is billed like our swim lesson program. They're not registered swimmers yet. But if you join that pre-competitive program, we call it base camp, then we pretty much know that you want to join the swim team. It's great because it's a little bit more dollar per swimmer, and the ratio is a little bit better for coaching. Instead of 1 to 4 for a group, it's 1 to 8 or 1 to 12, depending on the age. And then when they go to the swim team, they already know how to swim. They know how to do the flip turns. They know how to use the clock. They know how to do all the things that swim coaches struggle with teaching little kids. So I think that that's another reason that swim lesson programs can and should partner with local swim clubs.
Okay. So just a follow-up on that one as well. So if you're Cobra Swim Club or whoever, one natural next step could be to identify the swim schools in your region, in your community, and going down and have a conversation with them about how you can partner, and divide out these 4 areas, and then see what commonalities you can create, or some partnerships you can create to create that progression. Okay, let's go on to the last, well, no, 2 more here. Barriers. So what do you see as the barriers to forming partnerships? Are you concerned about municipalities feeling swim clubs and swim schools are trying to encroach on their core business? For the swim schools, do you see swim club pre-competitive programs as a barrier? If so, how would you best position these different programs, i.e. your services? Again, any lessons learned. So Sharon, can we start with you? We've kind of answered some of this, but what do you think?
Yeah. The barriers I would have said previously would be non-entrepreneurial thinking on the part of municipalities or clubs. Right now, again, we're in different times, so things could very much change. I love the idea of what George was just talking about, the base camp idea. And we have that included in our new business model and the new facility. So going forward, we would look to do a pre-competitive level as a part of our swim school curriculum. But I think as far as the other questions right now, everything's open for any kind of partnership to happen right now.
And let me interject a question that just came from the audience. The question is, are there experiences of cooperation and or competition for access to available pool spaces between swim schools and swim clubs as you're trying to find more space? Clearly, that's not really the case when you own your swim school. But again, pointing out, are swim schools and clubs fighting for some of that available pool space?
Anyone want to take that, or any thoughts?
Or work it into the questions, the
Okay.
answers to these topics kind of fits into this barrier conversation.
Okay, let's go to Karim on this question on barriers.
Yeah, so I believe there's a couple of barriers, but the biggest one that stands out to me is a communication barrier and a lack of understanding from both industries. So swim schools and clubs can learn from one another greatly. Let's say a partnership were to be formed and a swim school were sending leads to clubs. If the leads coming from the school are okay, and that club wants them to be great, why not talk to the swim school about improving the end portion of the school's curriculum, right? Many schools do not teach butterfly or pre-competitive stroke corrections at the end of their program because they lack the knowledge of an experienced swim coach, and most of the instructors can't even swim butterfly. This is just an example. That being said, a swim coach may not understand the graceful and empathetic side of a learn to swim curriculum and the customer experience side of the business, right? So I find from my experiences dealing with clubs and coming from a club environment is a club can push too hard, too early, resulting in many children dropping out of their program because their leads from the school come from a much more controlled environment. Clubs, like we just talked about before, have colder pools and much larger groups with less individualized attention for their younger levels. So if your leads are coming from a different environment, a transition process for those leads needs to be made. If you want quality leads from a swim school partnership, engage them to understand your wants and needs.
Very good. Okay, Kim, over to you.
Yeah, well said. I guess I could just offer you a Soul Swim Club's perspective. And I think we've created really positive relationships with our municipality partners because we, I guess, offer programming that is within our scope of expertise. You know, we try really hard not to compete with existing aquatic programs that either our swim schools are offering or our municipality. So I guess alternative programs that we, focus on is like master swimming, and we have a teen master swimming for those, you know, those athletes that are deciding maybe we're not going to continue on to the national scene, but we still love to stay in shape. We want to think about becoming a lifeguard or instructor, and we have that program for them. You know, we work hard to work with other sport groups as well. So we do work with, say, track and field, and we do kind of a cross-training program within the two teams. But yeah, I would have to say, I think one of the reasons why we work well with other organizations in our city is because we're staying within our expertise.
Okay. George, your thoughts?
Yeah, there are absolutely barriers with access to water and people competing for water, and that's why we have this project here to fill that gap and fill that void.
Okay. Okay. There's some questions, but let's go on to the last question, and then Stu can circle back. So this is about recruitment. This is the last question. This is great. Recruitment of instructors. So it seems like swim clubs are a great source of instructors for swim schools. Do you have any formal or informal strategy to recruit new instructors? Can you think of any formal or informal ways to make this connection? Any lessons learned or thoughts? Sharon?
So another interesting COVID result was when we went back to work, many of our staff were on CURB and didn't need to make any money. And so we had to look to a new group of people to recruit from. So we were looking more at the high school students, and a number of our latest hires have come out of the club environment in high school swimming. So that's our new strategy.
Okay. Okay. Karim?
Yeah, I think this is another great opportunity for clubs and schools to work together. Clubs produce motivated and dedicated individuals, and these are some of the traits a swim school would want for their new hires. So, like, the learn to swim skills to teach an instructor is the easy part. Right? Hiring an instructor with some of the mentioned traits can be difficult, really difficult to find. This also gives the opportunity to showcase a professional development option to your club. Many private swim schools invest in their instructors at a young age with professional development education so they can move up the ranks in the company. There are some swim schools currently providing this level of partnership around the world, and because of this, their clubs are top in their respective countries, especially in Australia. It's a revolving door and a very productive partnership.
Okay, great point. George, where do you recruit from?
Originally, our strategy to attract good instructors was to increase their pay rate, and that worked a little bit, but really swimming lesson instruction wasn't a thing in our town at all, pretty much. So we did collect some good instructors that way. As our swim team grew, I'd echo what Sharon and Graham said. Our senior team swimmers, our older swimmers are the best instructors. The issue with that is if we go to an away meet or we have some sort of swim team conflict, then our staff is decimated and we can't make a dollar. So we'd like to have a good mix. We have about 35% non-swimmers, or excuse me, non-swim team kids, and the rest adults or other high schoolers that aren't on a swim team. And I think, they're all competing for the same type of jobs. So even another 10 cents to the dollar or a quarter of the dollar really makes a big difference in what choice these kids and these adults choose to get a job.
Great. Okay. Great comments. Stu, we've got a whole bunch of questions here. Do you want to, so it's, let's say it's 1:14, so I think we'll go for another 15 minutes. So do you want to pick some of the most relevant ones? And
well, let me run, first of all, with a comment back from Ray with the Stingrays in BC, relevant to recruiting of instructors. he focuses on with their club that they have a junior program which takes some of the older swimmers and helps coach the younger swimmers. Clearly that works within the club. And again, that is often a vehicle to take some of these junior coaches and also build their experience and even train them to help instruct. So that can be those junior coaches can be that bridge if it can work within your swim school and you have that kind of relationship with the local club team. So any comments on that from anybody in terms of how that applies to a club team and then taking that down to the level of the swim school?
Anyone? I think they all agree.
Certainly that was the point Claire model.
Yeah.
Right? They were very, very successful in the old days. That was
Yep. Well, Trevor, you brought up in the chat room that there appears to be a gap between the swim schools and the clubs. And you asked, how can Swimming Canada help to fill that gap? Simon responded that, boy, wouldn't it be great if Swimming Canada could put a program together much like the Amateur Swim Association in the UK with the pre-competitive award levels and the development meets that fill that pre-team need. And we had several responses in favor of that. But to the group and to our Swimming Canada people on board, how are ways and that Swimming Canada can help bridge that gap and make that connections in that logical progression from swim lessons to stroke mechanics to pre-team into the actual swim team?
I can speak to that for a second, if possible. I think that, the curriculum of each swim school is unique and obviously set up to be as efficient as possible by each entity. One thing that we found is that the swimmers or pupils between lessons and team, their parents really want to see them race. And the traditional swim meet format is not conducive to a swimmer at that level. So a governing body or an LSC, local swimming committee in the US, could come up with or devise or create a series of competitions that are unique and special and to the pre-comp group.
One thing that came up and relevant to that bridging the gap, I think it may have been Kareem, but you mentioned one of the barriers, maybe it was George, talked about what a change for a kid that goes from the warm water, 5-to-1, 4-to-1, 3-to-1 teaching ratio, warm water from swim lessons into a competitive program with colder water, maybe 20 kids to a coach. We've done some research on this and finding out how you can really minimize the drop-off from swim lessons to even pre-team programs when you can start the pre-team and early steps of the team training in warm water. Most clubs don't have access to warm water because of how it's used or the municipal pool may not have it. So there's another way that can, when we talk to the swim schools who cannot really provide that transition beyond their lessons, can a swim club become a provider of a pre-team program using the swim school facilities when they're not needed for lessons? Ideally, swim schools will never have available time because they're so busy. But again, I don't want people to forget how critical that water temperature is in making that transition.
Stu, if I can just add a comment in here. My name's Tiernan. I run a company called Making Waves Swim School. We're actually a feeder program into Cobra Swim Club. Ironically, snakes can't swim, so that's funny. But yeah, listen, Cobra Swim Club, we've had a really strong relationship with them. Although it seems like from the call, she's working with several swim schools. I thought it was an exclusive relationship, so we'll talk about it later. I think Kareem outlined it really well. From our point of view, there's an opportunity to get feedback from the competitive team about the quality of the swimmers that we're sending to them. We also get to lean in on them for coaching advice and techniques because we're a lot of times teaching the Red Cross or the Life Saving Society program, and we don't have that training and that specialized training that the advanced swim coaches have. So there's an opportunity there, but to bridge that gap between what we would call level 10 and these pre-competitive and competitive programs, what we've had Cobra do in the past is come into our facilities on the last day of lessons when the children are getting their level 10 badge. And they can set up a table and they can talk to the parents about what the next steps are for the kids. So I think so those are some great opportunities to be able to work together, both from the competitive side, because they get well-trained young swimmers. A lot of the swimmers that are coming out of our program are 7 and 8 years old, and they're doing 500 meters of continuous swimming, which is kind of like the gold standard for learn to swim. Instead of waiting until they're 11 and 12, sometimes coming out of the municipality program. Generally, the parents that are in a private swim school are very dedicated to teaching the children how to swim. They come every week for years on end until the children know how to swim. So it cuts both ways. It's a mutually beneficial relationship. And I think too, for all the competitive swim teams out there, if you want a source of young, well-trained swimmers, reach out to your local swim schools and develop that symbiotic relationship, because private swim schools are just at their infancy in Canada. We're growing. We're taking over more and more of the market share. Sharon talked about cities and municipalities divesting in their capital assets, especially during these times when they're cash strapped. And so there's a lot of swim schools popping up. And just to give you an idea, we're one of the only swim schools in Brampton, or so I thought. And in Brisbane, Australia, where there's just over 2 million people, they have 200 swim schools. So the Australian market is much more competitive, and we're probably 20 or 30 years behind in Canada. But you're really starting to see it in the last 5 years with private swim school operators popping up all over the country.
Thanks, Darren. And I think the lesson there is break down the barriers, reach out if you're a swim school, if you're a swim club, to your partners in your community, and start the dialogue and see where the intersection is and see how you can help each other. And
try to make it an exclusive relationship and get it in writing.
There you go.
Don't worry, you're our favorite.
You hear that? That's good. Okay. Stu, anything else we should, we're at 1:22, so we got a few minutes maybe.
I will make 2 comments. One, from Sarah, really raised the question of, with the discussions of swim lessons leading to pre-teen, clearly concerned with Swimming Canada here, and indeed competitive, versus lessons that really focus on water safety. She used the example of developing swim skills to survive an accident and fall into deep water. In your swim school, in your lesson curriculum, is there a need to diverge those 2 goals? Some schools I see, there's not really a separate water safety versus swim lessons that are more competitive oriented. But I'd love to answer Sarah's question from you all.
I can speak to that for a second, Stu.
Yeah.
I think that, almost every curriculum that I've seen has check marks for safety, and not just dialogue, but skills, putting your hands on the wall and being able to pull yourself out, things like that. Our contention has always been that if someone's a strong competitive swimmer, you're going to be in a really good position to prevent drowning. If you can do freestyle and have strong strokes, that's going to be a skill that's going to help save your life as much as any other skill. So preparing kids for competitive swimming makes them stronger swimmers. And yes, you do have to touch on specific skills for, safety for kids that can't quite swim yet. But really, if you gear your lesson program toward competitive swimming, you can't go wrong.
So the safety issues that you raised really are addressed in your entry level and lower level swim lessons, and are part of the same question as you progress through your skill levels.
Throughout, yeah.
Yeah. One follow-up question, looking again for any more input on how Swimming Canada may be able to help bridge that gap. So in terms of the badges, or something that's maybe a marketable feature that some schools could use, and something that Swimming Canada may want to just address in the future.
Yeah, Stu, I think from a learn to swim environment in a private swim school, most mature private swim schools are developing their own curriculums that they can brand themselves. and they're reticent to take on other programs. So I wouldn't generally waste your time in that space, because we already have Red Cross and Life Saving in Canada. And generally swim schools start out with one of those two programs, and then as they mature, they develop their own.
Yeah. And I think the question really had to do with just when you got to the end of that traditional swim lesson program, the next step.
Perfect.
As a really introductory to competitive swimming team. So.
Okay, that's great. Any last comments from our panelists? Okay, well, I'd just like to thank you for agreeing to participate. I think this was a great start, and we've got to keep this dialogue going. Just a few housekeeping notes. This is going to be recorded, and we're going to post it. So if you've got others in the swim club community or the swim school community, please have them watch it. But I think we've provided some good information here. There will be a follow-up survey. You'll get an email. So please fill it out to help us how to do better and maybe help us prepare what the next topic should be in this area and other areas. And our next webinar is likely, we haven't set a date, but it's likely going to be in a month or so, and might be around the whole COVID issue, but we're still deciding, or S&C still deciding what that might be. So thank you, Trevor, for your great perspective. Thank you, panelists, for your words of wisdom. And we look to keep this dialogue going. So thank you very, very much for attending today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.